All right, so if you haven't heard, recently there has been a lot of information, a lot of cases, especially with Trump and all of this E. Jean Carroll and just this court, judicial, jury, judge type of stuff. And a lot of it is, if you want to say questionable, in the verdicts as well as all of this that's happening. And so there's been recently an 83 some $1 million verdict in favor of E. Jean Carroll, and there is a lot of news coming out, right? And so if you follow this or if you don't, that's okay. But as a body of Christ, as a believer, one thing I want to talk about that the Lord has led me in Scripture is the modern day version of what this persecution, what God says about this in terms of what he's going to do specifically, what he showed me, as well as how you can read what's going on. And so I'll talk about the different audience types. I'll talk about how some of this, if you want to say, is scripted, or some of this is real, very, very real, but it's playing out in a way that you would not imagine. And so this is what I want to talk about today. And so the first thing I want to talk about very briefly is that bearing, and again, I'm not going to make any accusations just yet, right? I'm not going to say anything about anybody, but one thing I want to say about court cases, about you in your ordinary life, how you interact with people, with your neighbor, with your family, your friends. The one thing that has heavily been on my mind, which is, I want to say in righteous anger, but also just as a courtesy, as an encouragement to you, if you are going through this yourself, whether you're on the receiving end or you are giving this to somebody else, is that the idea of false testimony is not good. The idea of giving and bearing false witness, as is the 9th commandment in the Bible, one of the 10 commandments, is that you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And so there's a lot of verses that I just want to quickly go over that talk about how severe this is. And again, if you're watching this, you're like, oh, brother, just that's obvious. But you have to realize how dangerous, how bad, how abominable this is to the Lord. And so this is where I want to just quickly go over some verses, right? Exodus 20 being part of the 10 Commandments, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Proverbs 19:5, a false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies will not escape, right? There's plenty of Proverbs. I read all of Proverbs yesterday, and there's a lot. I'm not going to go over all of them. Pick a few. Matthew 5:11, blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. And so this is if you're on the receiving end, right? As a word of encouragement. Matthew 26:59-60. Now the chief priests, the elders, and the council sought false testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Even though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. But at last 2 false witnesses came forward. Proverbs 25:18. A man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a club, a sword, and a sharp arrow. Psalm 27:12, do not deliver me to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and such as breathe out violence. Proverbs 6:16-19, these 6 things the Lord hates. Now, really listen to this. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him, a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren, right? There's a couple more verses, but I think you get the point. The Bible speaks very heavily about the idea of false testimony and false witnesses. If you come against somebody, and you have to, you don't even have to have, in some sense, a moral compass to really understand this. And again, I'm not trying to level sin and put one above the other or whatnot. But if you innocently, maybe you're gluttonous and you're eating too much or something, and you're sinning in some way, right? And you don't have that strong of a compass, it may kind of go over you. It may not, you may not understand certain things, maybe as a non-believer or even as a believer. But when you conjure up something that is not true, and you go against somebody, whether officially in the court or with strong intentions to try to take somebody else down, that should overwhelm you, right? Especially if you're a believer, but it should allow you to kind of wrestle in your internal heart to say, okay, there's something off about this. And so that's why, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here from Scripture and what God says, but it's very obvious that this is very much a detestable thing to the Lord. And I say this with some a heavy heart of grief, of just sorrow, right? With grace and mercy also. I'm trying to balance it out without just wanting to like yell at somebody in righteous anger, but you have to very much carefully take and heed these words of warning. Wherever you're going to go, whoever you talk to, be very, very careful how this will come against you, whether on Judgment Day or right now. Because as it says, right, in that proverb, a man who bears false witness, right, they will not go unpunished. And he who speaks lies will not escape. They will literally come to their downfall in a certain way. And so, again, I'm not trying to get too emotional about this, but you have to really grasp that idea, right? So so this has been set, okay? As much as the barometer, the moral compass, the direction, it's been set. It's just a matter of how are you going to receive and really take this to heart into your life, right? If I go against somebody in that way, there's such a overwhelming sense of like, oh my gosh, like don't do it. Again, I'm not doing it. I'm saying that it would be so bad for me to be able to do that. So I say this because there are people that are very, very wicked. The Bible talks about in the end days, and I mentioned also Matthew 5, and anybody in the end times that will have people be persecuted in this way. And so we're living in a time, right, where a lot of us don't understand the gravity and recognize how this is playing out in modern day society. So this is the transition that I want to go to, which is that because a lot of us, we're seeing news, we're seeing how objective, if you want to call it that, if you want to call it neutral, whatever it is, however this is playing out for you in terms of how you consume news and your sort of paradigm of looking at characters, political figures, celebrities, right? Your church leaders, right? Other Christian influencers or whoever it is that's out there. However you're looking at that, we think because the world is all, fine and dandy, we're highly advanced and we live in America and all that stuff. We don't really see how this can play out because we're giving the justice system, we're giving juries and judges the benefit of the doubt in terms of, well, it can't be that bad. Like surely they can't come with such a devious, evil intention to be able to bear false witness against somebody. But again, you would be wrong because when the Bible talks about the great apostasy, the great falling away, when the Bible talks about the end times, people will have a hot rod seared into their brain. They won't know their left hand from their right hand. There will be a strong delusion that even God sends. When we talk about those things, you have to understand how bad it would be about that, right? So a lot of us, let me also say this. A lot of us, we misconstrue the interpretation of what is a lie with what is the truth. And so this is where when somebody says, oh, that's a lie, but really it could be the truth, there's a level of looking deeper beyond the surface level that allows people to really comprehend not what is black and white, but really what is in the gray area and deeper than that. So this is why a lot of us even will speak in a way where we say, well, you lied about this. Well, that's a lie, but they're basing their judgment and their anchor, their foundation on something that is incorrect to begin with, or they're looking at it in a lens that just is not the right lens. So I'm going to talk about this in just a minute with regards to this case. And so when you look at certain people, and you can also get to a point where you may not necessarily know all of the details behind like a case, behind what goes on with the details and all that stuff, but you can be led by the Spirit to have peace. You can even be directed and prompted to think and have certain words or thoughts of a person. And you can look at it and say, okay, that person is innocent or that person's not innocent, right? The example I give a lot is when King Solomon, had these two women who said that their son, right, this is in the Bible, their son, one of them died, one of them was the real son. They both said, this is my son. And so King Solomon basically said, in his wisdom, split them in two. And based on how they reacted, the mothers, right, one mother, the real mother, said, hey, no, don't do that. Just give the son to the other person. And the other person just reacted in a weird way. And so King Solomon, he looked at that, discerned it, and said, okay, the real mother is this person, give the kid through that to that person. So there are ways when you read and look at somebody, you can have a conclusion that is godly, biblical, and correct, right? You may not know the details, right? Maybe Solomon didn't know exactly what was what, but his discernment was such that you looked at it and you said, okay, this is what it turned out to be. So I want to play this quick clip where if you read, or if you've been reading, and again, a lot of people are not following this, and it's fine. It's if you want to say it's a distraction, there's that. But it's very good to know, because this is a high-profile case of what happens, again, like I've said, to a lot of believers, a lot of people that are standing up, and exactly what the prophecy of the Bible is talking about when it's talking about the end times and all of these false witnesses that come up. So let me just quickly show this.
No, I'm glad you asked me that question. No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I am having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have. I have not spoken because I respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for months in this state, the state of New York. Attorney General Letitia James, and now this. Weeks. Why? Because President Trump is leading in the polls, and now we see what you get in New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump. But I am not proud to stand with what I saw in that courtroom. I'm not finished. Let me just finish and I'll take questions, please. Before I walked into court, that judge decided that every single defense President Trump had, we were not allowed to raise in front of the jury. It is in writing, and I encourage the journalists, the real journalists, to take the minute to look at his orders. There was no proof. And I couldn't prove that she didn't bring in the dress. There was no DNA. There was no expert. My experts were denied. Two of them were denied to come in. They didn't let me bring up that Reid Hoffman funded Ms. Kaplan. And you know what we got in there? That my witness, who was her friend, who said that she is a drug addict and the drug addict is herself. That friend, I found out in there, was paid for by Ms. Kaplan's firm, and that is disgusting. That is a violation of everything I stand for, and that is why I stand with Trump. And that is why so many Americans are so proud that he is running again and so excited to run to the ballot box. But don't get it twisted. We are seeing a violation of our justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not allowed to be stripped of every defense that you have. You are not allowed to be told that you can't bring it up. And imagine a point where a judge tells the lawyer, before your client, the former president of the United States, the leading candidate and obvious nominee for the Republican Party, before he takes the stand to defend himself, Ms. Haba, tell me the questions you're going to ask in open court and tell me exactly what he's going to respond. And then edited my questions, edited the response he was allowed to give. And guess what my client did? He took the stand. He abided by the rules of this corrupt system that I have seen. We will immediately appeal. We will set aside that ridiculous jury. And I just want to remind you all of one thing. I will continue with President Trump to fight for everybody's First Amendment right to speak. Everybody's a right to defend themselves when they are wrongfully accused, and to be able to say, I didn't do it. And to double and triple and quadruple down and say, this is wrong. This is wrong. But we are in the state of New York. We are in a New York jury, and that is why we are seeing these witch hunts, these hoaxes, as he calls them, and this is another one of them, be brought in New York, in states where they know they will get juries like this. It will not deter us. We're fighting, and I assure you, we didn't win today, but we will. The record that was made in there, and the behavior I saw in there, some of which was reported widely today, gave us the most perfect record on appeal, and even if I needed it, which I don't, we were stripped of every defense, every single defense before we walked in there. And I am proud to stand with President Trump because he showed up, he stood up, he took the stand, and he faced this judge. And you know what? I'll continue to do so with him. Yes.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former
Of course, I've spoken with the president.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former president scared now of the consequences of his actions?
The former president does not live his life in fear, as you've seen every single day. The former president and probably future president will continue to fight for Americans. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, so as you can see there, I wanted to show the whole thing because of how powerful that person responded. But you can see, again, this is an example of if you look at somebody speaking and how you can sense in the spirit what's right, what's wrong. If you have that kind of discernment, this is an easy conclusion for many people. And so for me, as I look at this, there are multiple ways that you can kind of, I don't want to say multiple, but there are ways that you can analyze this. And so this is something that I put together in my slideshow. Let me just pull this up. But there are multiple audiences, as I've been saying before, that are being addressed, okay? And so if you've seen this before, I've talked about how anything almost that happens has a different target audience, and it's being interpreted in a certain way, whether you want to say intentionally, whether you want to say by the sovereignty of God, or any other way to which when you read it, you would say, okay, this is, for me, as I perceive it right now, this is how I'm going to see it come to pass. And so the first way, right, is the audience one, right? The audience one are the people that when they look at it, they'll see it as a right versus wrong, okay? And so what I mean by that is that here's a case. The verdict was in favor of E. Jean Carroll. It was not in favor of Trump. And people will think, oh, well, that means that because the winner got the verdict, then they were right and the loser was wrong, right? So people take it at face value. What happens is that if the trial or the jury or the appeal system, whatever it is, comes later on to reveal certain things, more and more things happen, right? And you literally heard it from Alina, right, Haba, the attorney, that the jury, the judge, all these people, they refuse to hear certain things, right? So again, this is given the fact that if you think that this trial is real, in that all of the stuff that is being presented is as evidence and all that stuff has been factual, in that certain things are leading people to say that this is can be dismissed, or if you want to say for E. Jean Carroll's side that it is right or whatever it is. So all that stuff within the court, right, has been denied and rejected and all that stuff. So later on, what will happen in audience one, again, if you want to live in this reality, is that, okay, innocent until proven guilty or whatever verdict happened, I guess Eugene Carroll is right, Trump is wrong. And later, when there's a redemption, then people will think, okay, well, until it's redeemed or appealed and somebody wins, then Trump will win, or maybe not. And so this is the reality, right, that people will operate in until they're proven right or proven wrong. So this is a very normal way to look at it, as in a normie, right? It doesn't mean, again, that you're in favor of Trump or you're against Trump. This is how you would basically interpret something like the legal system today. But as well, people will wrongly be, like I've said earlier, be persecuted. They'll be wrongly, right? You have plenty of innocent people in jail, right? Serving life sentences or whatever it is for the wrong, I don't know, like old DNA test showing that that person was there or not, and all that stuff. But this is how somebody would operate in audience number one. Audience number two is where somebody like any one of us as a mature Christian, we can more easily recognize what's going on. Also, as well, if you are awake into what's really going on, which is that there's a persecution, there's an injustice that's happening that is uncalled for because of all of the other stuff that's happening. The hit jobs, trying to take Trump down, trying to stop him from the quote unquote 2024 election, and all of this stuff. And so in this situation, what's happening is that people recognize there's a constant hit job, a hit piece. There's a constant takedown of Trump and trying to get him, trying to distract the people, trying to smear his name, trying to, again, going back to false testimony, trying to go against Trump. And so whoever these people are, whether they're obviously, false witnesses, false testimony, whether they are paid, whether they are being bribed, whether they are whatever it is, and this is that judge, I forget his name, but all these people are in on what is basically this concerted effort to take down Trump. And so people see through that and they can say, oh, this is persecution. Obviously, the stuff from before didn't pan out, so they're trying to grasp at straws to try to take him down. So this is the second group that many of us in this chat or in this channel are in to be able to recognize what's happening here. What's happening in the third group is where it gets a little bit tricky, okay? And so let me explain. In audience 3, again, I've said before, are those that have been really enlightened and they're seeing into what people may call, oh, that's conspiracy, that's conjecture, that's whatever that is, right? It's basically a movie. You're basically watching a movie. And so this is what I would say is scripted, what a lot of people will say is actors, what a lot of people will say is, oh, this is all being done to awaken the mass population. And so this is where you may even give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to people like E. Jean Carroll and these quote-unquote corrupt people, because if you really believe, right, again, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but if you really believe that, then you would see that this would be basically a tactic to, again, wake people up, right? Wake people up. So this is all being done to see how exaggerated something is, to then get people that are sleeping or in a zombie-like state to wake up. And if you have any kind of a moral compass and you see that and you see the concerted effort against Trump, you would say, okay, that's definitely that. But to the degree that you think this is scripted, you could go there. And this is where I want to say this part here. Let me move myself over here. This is where you would say that not everything is scripted, meaning that because this is a real war, right? This is a real war that we are in, right? This is good versus evil. You're seeing some people that have been rounded up or whatever it is. There are some people that have been replaced. There's some people that are cooperating. They're taking deals or whatever it is. There's some people that are trapped and they're being forced to make moves, just like the end game of a chess game, right? In certain instances, whether it's these little subplots, whether it's part of the main narrative, all this stuff, there are actually real enemies and real evil actions that are occurring. So I say that because to give sort of the benefit of doubt of whether this is actually part of the hugely scripted thing, or whether this is part of the last-ditch efforts, the last sort of moves, the Hail Marys, right, that they're trying to do. This is what they're trying to conjure up, which, again, will fall flat on their face. Because what have we said before? Yes, God always wins. God is the one that is in control. Also, because there's always justice, evil will not go unpunished. False witnesses, false testimony will not go unpunished. So I'm a little moved right now because of everything that's happening. But before we jump to emotional conclusions, we always have to see it from a spiritual perspective. And also, we have to see it deeper, because every single piece of news that comes out is along the lines of what this is. Along the lines of whether it's targeting a certain audience, whether you're seeing it so that you can see what's at the deeper level, or you can say that it's part of the whole, plan, right? The good guys are winning, right? You're watching a movie, like all that stuff. So, because you're seeing this in this way, to each their own. Every person in their respective audience group, they're waking up if you so choose to, right? And there's people that will not wake up, right? There are some people that are not going to understand, what's really going on. But to the degree that you are either an audience 2, which is a lot of those that are watching, or you're an audience 3, you're seeing it from this perspective, and you can be, I don't want to say comforted, but you can feel rest assured that God's in control first and foremost, but the good guys, the white hats, are winning. So this is sort of how we want to look at something like this, right? And so I wanted to show you guys this today because any other thing, right? Any other news that's coming out going into this quote unquote election in 2024 is going to be along these lines. And you're going to see more and more exaggerated, crazy things. 83 some $1 million, right? For what is defamation or all this stuff. And again, like you heard in that full debrief, that these guys are not getting sort of their time of day to defend themselves and all that stuff. So wanted to give you guys this quick sort of rundown to say that, first of all, God has it. He's the one, according to Scripture, according to everything that we've been reading, we've been understanding. This is his consistency and how he's going to be judge, jury, and executioner, right? In all of all of the stuff that's happening. So whether you want to say it's punishment, it's going to not go unpunished, or you are being protected because those that are doing righteous things. And this is the other part of the title of this live, the protection. You will be protected if you are actually doing the right things before the Lord. You will actually have a good, righteous, okay stand if you are, whether it's the case with Trump or whether it's with your family, your church, whatever it is, before God, right? On God, if you want to say, a lot of people say these days, you will be okay. So I want to give you guys this quick encouraging word because a lot of us don't really see it from different sides. And so it's very, I don't want to say it's very difficult, but you can clearly distinguish who's who and what God is going to do with some of these people. And so, again, what is the one encouraging thing I want to say is that for those of you that are seeing it, the way you have to see it, whether it's even in the chat right now, or whether it's on Twitter, on the news, with how people are responding, the first question that the person asked with regards to are you proud or are you ashamed for representing Trump and how she had to defend that, they're interpreting, again, this stuff in an evil way. You have to see the juxtaposition of how bad it is and how the left or the woke, the liberal, however you want to call it, you have to see how bad it is for you to then see the other side, the good side. And that's how you grow into your discernment in your paradigm of the world, your perception of reality. So this is where I wanted to talk about. So love you guys. Be encouraged. Talk to you guys very soon.